As you know, I spent a week at Kintail this summer. And when the kids arrive at Kintail, they have this list of camp rules. And there are things like when they can go swimming, when they can do things, what the language they should use with each other, the times that they can run willy-nilly through the forest, and the times they can't. When we had the Vacation Bible Camp earlier this year, we similarly set down a list of recommendations, rules, and they were things like you can't go off the property, and we talked about bullying too. When we sit down in our small groups, we have a covenant, an agreement. We promise to respect each other, to listen to each other. And what happens in small groups stays in small groups. When we listen to the rules, it makes a difference. We certainly have a whole number of rules, regulations, laws here in this great country of ours. These 10 that we have just read are the rules, the commandments that God has laid out. I don't want to pull them apart one by one because we would be here all day and probably well into next week. But I really want to talk about why God gives us these 10. God's wisdom is infinite, but he is very concise in what he says to the people of Israel in these 10 commandments. I read this little snippet a couple of weeks ago. Commenting on the Bible, Ronald Reagan said, "I have wondered at times what the 10 Commandments would have looked like if Moses had run them through the U.S. Congress." Someone has made a list of the U.S.'s most famous documents, and they found out that the Gettysburg Address has 286 words. The Declaration of Independence has 1,300 words, but the U.S. government regulations on cabbage sales have 29,611 words. We take everything and reduce it to the ridiculous. I tried to find out Canadian statistics on this, but couldn't, unfortunately. It was much too convoluted. By contrast, the 10 Commandments are 179 words. God is the master of brevity. It doesn't take him long to say what he has to say, mostly I think because he knows we have a very short attention span. He does go on a little bit longer after this. The other 613 distinct commandments that follow in the law of Moses, he gets a little more long-winded there. But I think that is mostly us taking what he has said and trying to pick it and pull it apart. These 10 commandments, they say, are the table of contents for the other 613. Just a little more explanation. In these 10, the first 4 are God setting up God's relationship with the people of Israel. Much like we set up our relationship with our children. We have, how many of you have ever said, my house, my rules? At some point, yeah, we have. God is saying to the people of Israel, you are my people, my house, my rules. And he's setting it up in that manner, and he's saying to them, I am to be your God. You're not to have any other gods. Because he is setting up his relationship with them, establishing what is best for them. When we say my house, my rules, it's because we think we know what's best for our kids. Well, maybe we know what's best for our kids. We have to trust that we know a little better than they do. And God is saying the same thing. I know what's best for you. I am your God. If we establish that first and foremost, then what follows is not an autonomous, autocratic laying down of the rules. It is not coming out of a place of, you must because I said so. Although I probably have said so at some point. But if they are God's people, then these commandments, well, they are taken in the spirit in which they're given. And the spirit is one of caring and compassion and love and concern and patience, not out of some dictatorial, you must. He reminds them, even before he gives them these 10 commandments, he reminds them that he is the one that brought them out of Israel. He is the one that has promised to take them on the journey to the promised land. He has provided for their every want in the food that we heard about 2 weeks ago, in the water that we heard about last week. He gave them a pillar of cloud to follow, and the fire as well by night. And he is taking them to where he wants them to be, to the land of milk and honey. Just an aside, has anyone ever wondered about the whole land of milk and honey thing? I read a wonderful article about that, and it explained it so beautifully. When you think about milk and honey, let's start with the milk. You get milk from animals, from cows that have a lush abundance to graze on, right? And honey comes from bees, which need lots of plants to be able to produce the honey. So God is promising the people of Israel that he is going to deliver them into a place of plenty. Lots of grass, lots of vegetables, lots of plants and animals that will survive. So that's what he's promising them. I found that really interesting because I had never really thought about it. But he's promising them everything that they need. He cared for them on the journey. He's promising to deliver them. And he's caring for them in establishing this covenant of rules with them, that they must understand. They have to be faithful to God in their worship of God. And if they continue to persist in making idols, they will remove themselves from their relationship with God. There will not be harmony with God. So many had done that over the years. In the time that they were living in, there were hundreds of different religions, most of them worshiping clay idols, worshiping man-made things. And he is saying to them, there's only one God, and it's me. If we can all worship one God in peace, then we'd have less to fight about, wouldn't we? There wouldn't be the wars in the name of the gods. There wouldn't be wars in the name of who you worshipped and how you worshipped. It seems very little has changed over the last 3,000 years, hasn't it? But if we could be bound together in praise of one God, we would have less to fight about. So why does he establish these first 4? So that we could be in peace with him, in right relationship with him. Now it's intriguing. When Jesus is asked to name the greatest commandment, what does he answer? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, and your mind, and with all your strength. And the second is this, love your neighbor as yourself. There is no greater commandment than these. In that answer, Jesus summed up the 10 commandments in about 40 words. God, the master of brevity, once again. The first 4 commandments deal with loving God, and the last 6 deal with us loving our neighbors as ourselves. The last 6 are for our sense of peace and protection. In the Canadian Criminal Code, in the preamble it says this: underlying the various theories explaining the purpose of criminal law is the basic premise that criminal law is a means by which society reaffirms its values and denounces violators. A change in values entails a change in the types of conduct society wishes to prohibit. These last 6 commandments reaffirm our values. These 6 commandments, if we adhere to them, it says this is what we expect as a society. If we adhere to them, we would have virtually nothing to fight about, would we? We'd be at peace with each other. And that's why God gives us these commandments. Honor your father and mother. If we started right there, if we could have peace and harmony in our families right from the get-go, it would certainly go a long way to peace and harmony in our society, because we would have that example. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. These 4 alone make up the bulk of our criminal justice system, our rules for living in this society. How many of you could recite the entire criminal code? But you can certainly remember these commandments that we are given by God. And if we could live by these 4 alone, we could certainly improve our relationship in the society. We wouldn't have to worry about sending our children out to play by themselves. Our prisons would be empty. Neighborhoods would not be fraught with tension. We wouldn't be scared to send our kids to school for fear of lockdown. I have experienced this as a mother twice. And I can't imagine anything more fearful. God wants us to live without fear, in peace and in harmony. That's what he wanted for the people of Israel. Prosperity. And that's what he wants for us. He says to us, if you can adhere to these commandments, it will be so much better. When I look at this last commandment, I think this speaks to having peace within ourselves. You shall not covet your neighbor's house, your neighbor's wife, your female slaves or male slaves, your ox, your donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. Coveting. That's almost a commandment unto itself in our society, although it sounds more like thou shalt covet. Our entire system in society seems to be built around it. Certainly our advertising, what goes on in our conversations with others. We want what other people have. What if we could let go of that? If we could, I think there would probably be a lot less stealing and murdering and adultery and bearing false witness. Because if we want what someone else has, it can lead us down that slippery slope to those others, can't it? And Jesus spoke to this in Matthew 5. He's speaking to the crowds after he's given them the Beatitudes, and he is addressing them on the topic of the law. He said, "You have heard it said that to those of ancient times, you shall not murder. And whoever murders shall be liable to judgment. But I say to you that if you are angry with your brother or sister, you will be liable to judgment." He goes on, "You have heard it said that you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lust has already committed adultery with her in his heart." There is the recognition that if you are coveting something that is not yours, it can lead to so much more. It causes disharmony with others, and it causes a loss of peace within ourselves. If we are always wanting, we are not living at peace. It consumes us. If we can let go of the coveting, will be at peace with ourselves. And that's the why of this last commandment. The commandments of God are not strict, autonomous rules laid out by an autocratic and arbitrary God. They're established by a God that cares for us, that wants the best for us, that knows what's best for us. After all, he created us. Why? Why the commandments? Peace with God, peace with each other, and peace within ourselves. It sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Amen.